Good to see you. That was an amazing interview.
Yeah. Okay, one
Uh,
second.
Darren, Gila, Guy, Yana, Rosemary, Christy, Ayala, Malachi, Andrew, Aleph, Sydney, Laura, Indy, Elias, David,
support this and we think
Matt.
it's fine, right? And so you're gonna make all of us fucking look bad with your shitty fucking behavior, right? So, anyways, next step mediation. We're
Hannah, good to see you here. Okay, so I'll ask you guys to just mute the mic. I'm gonna have these lessons were initially going to be private lessons. I was going to teach my wife the inner levels of the Torah, so I'll just be teaching her privately, but I'm going to keep the call open so that everyone can tune into these things. Shalom, Cecilia. So with that being said, we are starting on page 4 from Apples from the Orchard. Thank you, Shoshana, for sending in the photographs for everyone to follow along, and we'll start there. So okay, so we're on page 4. So in the first lesson that we went through, we discussed that the Torah we are reading is the Torah of Berea. We also discussed the differences between Atzilus and Ima, and we got to the point of our first discussion. And so the Arizal says here, thus the two words created and the name Elohim thus refer to Ima of Berea, because the word Bara corresponds to Berea, and the name Elohim refers to Ima, because the name of Elohim is the sphere of Bina, which nonetheless acts with the power of Ima of Atzilus that is vested in it. This is the meaning of Bereshis, an example with the power of the beginning. The word the beginning referring to Ima of Atzilus. The meaning of the entire verse is thus: in the beginning, an example with the power of the Ima of Atzilus. This is because the letter Beit at the beginning of a word is a double entendre. Earlier it revealed that the letter Beit has a numerical value of 2 because it posits 2 meanings. The first is it hints to the sphere of Chokmah, which was revealed as Aleph is Keter, Beit is Chokmah. And the second is that the letter Beit is the first letter of the word Bina. And so therefore we understand that this is Bina or Ima of Atzilus. And because the letter Beit also means with at the beginning of a word, thus the understanding is with the beginning. So he translates it as an example with the power of Ima of Atzilus. Elohim created, an example Ima of Berea created, because the name Elohim in the first verse signifies Ima, and the word Bara hints to the world of Berea, as it was mentioned. The heavens, an example Zeraim Pin of Berea, and the earth, an example Nukva of Zeraim Pin of Berea. This is further elucidated by the letter He, which is at the beginning of the heavens and the earth. So it just doesn't say heaven and earth, but the letter He at the beginning of a word is the He of Yod, He, Vav, He. And those are the 4 worlds. Yod is Atzilus, He is Berea, Vav is Yetzira, and the He at the end is Asiya. This teaching tells us that if the He is at the beginning of a word, it is referring to Berea. For example, there's a place where it says Elohim, but in another place it says, for example, that Moshe was Ish Ha-Elohim, that he was a man of Ha-Elohim, which again hints to this idea of Berea. Nonetheless, to flesh out and draw even much deeper levels, much more profound levels, it's a very esoteric sefer called Shoshan Yisad HaOlam. And in this sefer, it reveals that the 42-letter name of God corresponds to the first 42 letters of the Torah. That is from the bait of the word Bereshis to the bait of the word Bohu. And that the 42-letter name of God, an example, Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Yud, Tav, Sadi, etc., are using a series of 7 ciphers formed in this first verse. This would teach us that the Ana B'Choach is only a preservation of this most supernal key of the first 42 letters of the Torah, which form this name by a series of ciphers. That being said, using Bereshis, it says in her head, we can actually identify who Ima of Atzilus actually is. The Zohar states in, I want to say it's book 2, when discussing Ashura and Baal, that all who worship the moon honor Ashura, and all who worship the sun honor Baal. And it states over there, when discussing the Ashura pole, that she is the secret of Ashrei, meaning happy, or blessed, sometimes it's translated to. And Ashura is described there as the wife of Asher. Asher is the Rosh, it's a Saruf of Rosh, and it's also an allusion to the sphere of Keter. So why am I saying this? I'm saying this because Bereshis turns into Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Yud, Tav, Sadi using a series of ciphers, as mentioned before, and that Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Yud, Tav, Sadi is the numerical value of Ashura. This identifies what it was referred to as in the Ima of Atzilus. A much deeper level to this is I've revealed to you where the Arizal says that the wife of the initial Adam was Lilith. In the book by Chaim Vital, the Sha'ar Ruach HaKodesh, the gates of the Holy Spirit, it states over there that Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Yud, Tav, Sadi has a numerical value of Ashura, and then explains that Ashura is the secret, it's Malbush is the Chamor, the donkey, which is the sod of Lilith. The Arizal thus states that her root is in a supernal holy place, but she cannot manifest in the lower worlds in a holy manner, and therefore she manifests herself in the lower worlds in a klipathic sense. And this is that idea of Ima of Atzilus. It was also explained when commenting on the first part of Let Us Create Man Part 1 that Ima created without Abba, therefore the name Yudke Vavke is not found anywhere in the process of creation, and also that Abba sent off Ima. That is to say, she descended. And with this we can understand the idea where it says that the Ima of Berea created with the power of the Ima of Atzilus. It was understood that this occurrence happened because of the wisdom and understanding. That is to say, wisdom and understanding means the power of Atzilus, or the power to emanate, was inside of her. And therefore, Bereshit can also be read as in the head, but specifically Tav at the end of a word personifies a feminine. It also personifies a fixed. Hey at the end of a word and Tav at the end of a word can personify a feminine connotation. Therefore, the word Bereshis is a feminine word, which further elucidates to the idea that the Arizal is positing here. Now, it then goes into something incredible. It says, the Torah then proceeds to discuss the elevation of the 7 kings of Edom who died, for as it is known, remnants of these kings exist in every world. This is a very important understanding for us to understand about the 7 kings of Edom. The 7 kings of Edom, the Shorosh, or roots of these things, are to be found in the letters with the tagging as it's explained in Likutei. That's Shin, Tet, Nun, Ayin, Zayin, Sadi, and Gimel. These matters were not able to be expounded in Eitz Chaim, and all of the points that were brought out about them were hypothetical. He posits there in Eitz Chaim that everything that is being discussed in, for example, the Torah, was from the levels of Zerampin and Nukva. The kings are discussed from Zerampin and Nukva. And from the level of Arichain Pin, the kings are discussed in the nature of Abba and Ima, and this is in the Zohar. This actually hints to the idea that the Zohar is called the light of the supernal Ima, but when it came to the roots of the kings in the highest world, an example in the Atik, it was speculative. However, he does posit that Shin, Tet, Nun, Ayin, Zain, Sadi, and Gimel are the 7 kings of Edom that died. This is hinted at in the word Bereshis, because Bereshis is a saruf of 2 words, Beit, Rosh. Now, Beit is wisdom built her house with 7 pillars. Thus, we know that the 7 pillars are an allusion to these 7 kings. Beit, Rosh. And Rosh is always Keter, Chokmah, and Bina, which collectively are called a head. Rosh also is a saruf of Asher, and the name Echia, Asher, Echia hints to Chokmah, Keter, and Bina. This is the circular aspect, while the lower 7 are a linear aspect. So you can actually see the head of the king in the word Bereshis if you saruf it. You would draw 3 concentric circles, which would respectively be Keter, Chokmah, and Bina. And then the 7 holes or 7 sparks inside of that would be the house, an example of the 7 pillars that emerge from that place. Now that we've gone past that, he's then going to begin describing the 7 kings of Edom, because that's what we're talking about. This is the mystical meaning of the next verse. The earth was without form and void, referring to the shattering of the vessels. How did the shattering of the vessels actually occur? So when it says Vecharetz and the earth, we have to understand that the letter Vav has a value of 6 and hints to Zoranpin. And the letter He hints to Nukva. Thus, Vav and He are 7. And Eretz is the earth. Therefore, these refer to the 7 kings. And these 7 kings were called Tohu and Bohu V'choshet Opene Tahom. They collectively will correspond to the aspects of the Klippa. How did this occur, though? So, as will be explained in a couple of pages, it's hinted at in the word the heaven and the earth. And it occurred through the Chasadim and the Geburos, which caused this initial act to occur, but we'll touch on that later when he gets to there. So the next phrase, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters, of Baruch Elohim Merochef Opene Chamayim, refers to the life force, an example, the lights of the world of Tohu that the vessels could not contain. So this is signified by 2 aspects. So Zohar says in Book Bo that the Ruach Elohim refers to one spirit, and Merochefet contains Resh and Chet, which is Ruach without a Vav, meaning it's deficient. And that he blew spirit against spirit. And this is an idea of a type of zivugim, a type of zivug, which will be touched on later. This is the mystical meaning of the crowns atop of the letters. They allude to the lights that hover above them. That is to say, Likute explains that there are 3 tagging lines above every single letter, and that's because they receive from 3 heads. That is to say, the middle line is Keter, the right line is Chokmah, and the left line is Bina. And thus above the 7 letters are 3 tagim. These 3 tagim allude to the straight lines or of influence stemming from Keter, Chokmah, Bina. The center line being higher than the 2 adjacent lines because it refers to Keter. This next verse, and Elohim said, let there be light. Vayom Elohim Yehior refers to supernal Chesed, an example, the 8th king, Hadar, through which the other 7 kings were rectified. Now, this is the proper way to understand the rectification of the 8th king. It refers to the 8th Sphira in this instance. That is to say, from the heart spark itself. Because the lower 7, once Likute describes, once the letters emerged from the 231 gates, they were not rectified, they were destroyed immediately. Why were they destroyed immediately? Because they emerged outside of the heart spark, outside of that initial place. And therefore there was no life in that place, because wisdom gives life to its possessor. They did not emerge in the place of the restriction of the Simsum, which is called Nakshaba, did not emerge in that place, but emerged on the outside of that place. And therefore it did not contain life, they extinguished immediately. They would not receive light until Hadar, which is hinted to the 8th king. This is an allusion to Bina, though in the lower Partsu themes it has a different understanding. But at the much higher understanding, it refers to that heart spark. This is alluded to in the word Yehi-or. Yehi-or has a numerical value of the 231 gates. The word let there be light, Yehi-or, is 231. Well, it's 232. It's in Kalel. So it's 231 in Kalel. This is also the numerical value of the word Tehiru. Tehiru. Furthermore, Tekiru is a numerical value of 72, 63, 45, and 52. And it alludes to the idea that these lights were entering of 72, 63, 45, 52, passing through the restriction, through that head that I described, the hard spark, and descending to the first corrections of the sparks. Now, when you look at the Elan, you'll find 72, 63, 45, 52 is inside of the Simsim itself, inside of the restriction. So the first elements to be rectified were the refuse and shells, just as we see the shell develops before the fruit. Thus, at that point, those letters were in a klipothic state. They were called husks. They were called shells, externalities. Just like a vessel must be formed before it can be filled, so darkness preceded light. And so that we find Esau precedes Yaakov, that Ishmael precedes Yitzhak, that the land of Canaan precedes the land of Israel. And so this teaches us another thing. The other thing that this teaches us is that what we're describing, what we're learning, is essentially klipothic in nature. If the beginning is klipothic, then if the klipa comes first, then the entire process of creation is happening in the klipa. And that's what this idea is exemplifying here. So the first elements to be rectified were the refuse. Now there's an explosive secret behind this, which hopefully we'll touch on later. Thus it is written, let the waters swarm with living creatures, and similarly the creation of all other aspects of life, until finally on the sixth day man was created and the food inside the shell. That is to say that the 7 days of creation are literally the klipa. Now I'm going to take it to a higher level, because Merel Chafet, and is going to tell us in a little bit, is Mem Tav Resh Fei Chet. 288 died. Why is 288 died? Because the Arizal is going to say that it's 72 times 4. But the real secret is that 288 is the value of the word Ibur, and it means pregnancy. And so therefore we're talking about a pregnancy that was conceived of Ima, because it was said that Ima conceived of herself. This goes into much deeper levels, which the highest, most esoteric matters of this matter is not spoken of except in Tractate Nida in the Talmud. Tractate Nida is the tractate that deals with emission, feminine emission. And there are bizarre situations in there. For example, what if a woman gives birth to an animal? That doesn't logically make any sense. But if you understand, for example, let the earth bring forth, then you may understand a deep secret behind the female producing animals, so on and so forth. Now, the thing about these kings is that these kings are all aspects of Malkuth. Chaim Vital isn't completely sure of the nature of the kings, and so he posits two understandings. The first understanding, he says, is that they refer to the Malkuth of all the levels, or he says we can say that they refer to the Keter. So, as explained, Merel Chafetz means Mem Tav died, 288, Resh Fei Chet now means the Ibur died, the pregnancy died. And why did it die? Because wisdom gives life to its possessor, and because it wasn't created from that quality of life. So it says, so the
288 is also the number of the broken vessels, no?
Yeah. Oh, yes, 100%. Yep. And those broken vessels were the pregnancy. And when it said Ima created without Abba. Mm-hmm. So,
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thus it is written, let the waters swarm with living creatures, and similar the creation of all other aspects of life. And finally, on the sixth day, man was created. So that means that essentially the Sfirot, the days of creation, are talking about the tikkun, rectification of these kings. This is why I said V'charetz. That's Vav Hey. An example, Vav is the Vav of Yud Kei Vav Kei, an example is Zayin Pin. And Hey is an example of the Nukva. And Eretz are the kings. Thus there are 7 kings that are talked about. And so our sages said there are 7 earths. And this hints to this exact idea. So for this reason, separating the unwanted from the desired is forbidden on Shabbat. For this day is the way of the refinement of the world and the process of creation occurred. This talks an incredible secret about the messianic redemption. So during the time of Mashiach, we're talking about the 7,000th year, but we know that he doesn't come on Shabbat day. He actually comes on right before Shabbat. He comes right before Shabbat. But on the Shabbat day, it's actually divided into 2 parts. Why is it divided into 2 parts? Because we start off with Shabbat evening, and the evening is to give its portion to the achra, the husk that precedes the fruit, and then the day is to be given to the fruit. And so Shabbat is divided in between two aspects. In fact, our days are all divided like this, evening and morning, because in the Jewish calendar, our day starts at sunset. At sunset is actually the next day. And the idea behind this is that evening and morning, it combines these two. And that and the way that our days go, the husk will always precede the fruit. So for this, so the idea that everything is forbidden from being separated on the seventh day, hence the idea of the messianic redemption. For example, like if I have a bowl of apples and one of those apples kind of looks funny, on Shabbat, I'm not allowed to separate that apple. This gives us an idea about what happens during the redemption. During the redemption, everything is filled with so much Kedusha. And this is one of the ideas of the word Shabbat, because Shabbat contains the word daughter, which we know is the Nukva, but it also means the dwelling, to dwell. So separating the wanted from the unwanted, however, is permitted on the Shabbat, since this is not the way the world was created. One could ask, the account of the creation of Zerampin and Nukva, as well as the account of the creation of mankind, are repeated in the Torah. First, the Torah tells us that God created the heaven and the earth, referring to Zerampin and Nukva. The account of the following 7 days refers to the 7 extremities of Zerampin and Nukva, as it is known. He gives a list. So Sunday is Chesed, Monday is Gevura, Tuesday is Tiferes, Wednesday is Netzach, Thursday is Hod, Friday is Yisod, and Shabbat is Malchut. Then on the 6th day, the Torah tells us that God created man in his image, and further on, that God formed man out of the dust of the ground, interrupting these two accounts with a description of what occurred on the 7th day, as is written, in the heavens and the earth were completed. So, for example, there's two levels that are occurring. The first is he creates the heaven and the earth. And the creation process goes about through all of the corrections of each day, which is an aspect of Zerampin and Nukva. The reason why man is created on the 6th day is because Zerampin is not considered a complete Partsuf until it contains all 6 Sefirot. Those 6 Sefirot are Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yisod. Now, if you pay and scrutinize the words of the sages, they're going to say, even though there are 7 days of creation, there's 6 supernal days, because the 7th day is a little unique from the 6 other days, and that the 7th day has not manifested itself in reality. So for this reason, our sages have said, and the Arizal has explicitly stated in multiple places, that Malkuth is not completed, because she's to be a crown to her husband. The term crown hints to Keter. As this idea that Malchus, when it's completely rectified, when it's finally here and manifested in all of its qualities and aspects, will not reflect the lower grades of all the lower spheros, which are in the process of the tikkun right now, but rather it will reflect Keter itself. Because the entire purpose of the manifest of the holy emanator, the supernal emanator, the entire purpose was to bring potentiality into actuality. The entire purpose of the creation was to bring potentiality into actuality. And so for this reason, Malchus is associated with Keter and is even higher than Chokhmah. Chokhmah is Machshava, it's the brain. Brain is potentiality. Bina, for example, is the craftsman. So in the order of emanation, I revealed that the first initial steps of the existence was the restriction. That restriction refers to Chokhmah, which was developed the mind. Chokhmah is thus called mind. Now, it was explained that the hard spark is called thought. And this is the secret of Israel in the beginning, when Israel arose in thought. Israel hints to the 231 gates because Israel is a saruf of yesh, meaning substance, which was the yesh ma'ain, and Reish Lamed Aleph, the 231 gates. And so we find that the initial 2 states, an example of the supernal head of the king, are mind and thought. Mind brings into existence potentiality, and then thought acts as a craftsman to refine those thoughts into actuality, potentiality into actuality. The purpose of thought is to refine potentiality into actuality. So it's the same idea going on here. So for this reason, separating the unwanted is forbidden. And it talks about the discussions around Zerampin and Nukva. Then it says, in the first account of creation, the Torah mentions both male and female, while in the second account, God's command not to eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, the female is not mentioned at all. If the command was directed only to Adam, why was Eve punished? Furthermore, the female was not even created until after the command had been given, for the Torah says God caused a deep sleep to descend upon the man. Only after this was the command given. Now, there is a reconciliation to this. The reconciliation is that at certain points it says Adam, and another place it says Ish. I called her woman, Isha, because she came from Ish. Ish is man when he's separated from the female. Ish and Isha. This actually hints to two types of fire because they contain Ish, meaning fire, and what remains between Ish and Isha is Yod and He. Yod and He. This hints to this idea of a separation of Yod and He. That is to say, Chochmah and Bina, these two fires they derive their lights from. Nonetheless, to go back into simplistic matters, it can be argued that Adam is only Zakar v'Nukva. So even though it was said here, and he's bringing up a question that they would have, why is a woman being punished if the man was the one who gave the command to? And the second thing that should be asked is, why is Eve being punished if Eve isn't even mentioned in the garden at all? At no point is the word Chawa used inside of the story of the Garden of Eden. She's only called Chawa after their removal from the garden. And there's a very deep secret behind this, but we won't get into it now. We shall now explain this from the primordial world of Adam Kadmon. The 72 was not manifest. Only the 63 name began to manifest via the mouth, the nose, etc. This is why the Torah begins with the letter Beit, referring to the 63 name. So now it's hinting back to that idea of what Likutei reveals about the nature of Adam Kadmon, because the entire construct is really talking about the kings, the head of Adam, of the Atik, so on and so forth. Their use of the term Adam Kadmon is derived in two ways. There's the Yoshar, the straight Adam, and there's the circular Adam. It was explained in Likutei that the restriction or the Simsum actually hints to the circular aspect of the Adam Kadmon, and that the straight light hints to the straight Adam. But the Atik itself is really the secret of that straight Adam. Nonetheless, what it's saying here is that the lights of 63 began to manifest. That is to say, we're talking about the world of Berea, because the world of Atzilus was not being discussed. And so that's the idea that it's describing here. So when the 63 name issued from the Adam Kadmon, it was manifest partly as final 7 vowels of the 9 vowels of the 63 name, these being the mystical allusions to the primordial kings of Edom. And so that's on page 9 that we see here. So to give you the understanding of what this refers to, and this is an incredible secret, is they're talking about the Nikud. So there's 9 Nikudim, and it's saying the lower 7 Nikud. We don't include Nukva in this matter particularly, because when you assign the Nikud to the Sfirot, Malchus has no Nikud on it. Therefore, there are 9 Nikudim. The first 2, Kamatz means closed, and Petach means opened. And the remaining Nikud have 13 dots or 13 yods. They're formed out of 13 yods. Something like 2 dots, but every dot is a yod. These 13 yods have a numerical value of the word Ein, I. It also hints to the idea that the eye was essentially closed and then opened. Kamatz closed and Petach opened. So these lower 7 Nikud are the 7 kings. This further derives this idea in the world of points. So we'll go on to page 10. This is referred to by the phrase the heaven and the earth, which alludes to the 7 kings that were broken. Now we're getting into deep waters. So the heaven, so when we say Bereshis bara Elohim et hashamayim v'charetz, the heaven and the earth, these are the 7 kings, and it doesn't say the 7 kings, it says the 7 kings that were broken, the 7 kings that died. So what was the first verse? What is that heaven and that earth? It is the 7 kings of Edom. This is further exemplified by the idea of the Sophite letters of Berah, Elohim, Et, where the Sophite letters of Berah is Aleph, right? Elohim is Mem, and Es is Tav. This has the word Emes, meaning truth. And then the following is Hashemayim Va'es, and that Mem Tav means died. So the idea here is that the truth is they died. And so the Sophite letters actually tell us this to confirm exactly what the Arizal is saying. And this is further elucidating to this idea that Merochefet was this failed pregnancy. because the pregnancy was the kings of Edom that died immediately, they were destroyed. This is like a child that is birthed immediately as a stillborn. This actually hints to David, because David was born dead. And only when he received the 70 years from Adam did he live, but that 70 hints to these kings. And David is the aspect of Malchus, kingship, as is known. So this further hints to the idea of water. So when we say Varuach Elokim Merochefe Openech Hamayim, what does that mean? This is like water that's given birth from pregnancy. Because what comes first? Water. Now, how did this water come into place? It actually hints the breaking of the kings in the word Hashemayim, which we should read as Hey, which has a numerical value of 5. And Shemayim, our sages said, were created from 2 words, Eish Mayim, fire and water. These are the Chasadim and the Gevuros. The Chasadim is Mayim, water, and the Gevuros is fire, Eish. Thus, the word Hashemayim means 5 Chasadim, 5 Gevuros, 5 fires, 5 waters. This spreading of the Chasadim and the Gevuros is what caused the shattering of the vessels. Now, to understand the matter of a Ruach Elohim, to understand the matter of the spirit of Elohim vibrating over, we have to first understand that all of this is happening in the world of Berea. And we have to understand that the most external vessel was rectified first. Why? Because the most external vessel is the Nukva. Let me give you an example. If we look at it like rings of an onion, the most core of it is Atzilus. That's going to be Chaya, or we say Yechida, and surrounding that would be Chaya. And surrounding that's going to be the Neshama, and surrounding that's going to be the Ruach, and the most outer is going to be the Nefesh. That's Malchus. So when the kings died, this was the quality of the Nefesh. This actually hints to these five Gevuros, because Gevura is what? The name Elokim. And 5 times Elokim is the numerical value of the word Nefesh. Right? 86 times 5 is 430. That's the value Nefesh. This hints to this idea that the kings broke, or the most external vessel broke. When the most external vessel broke, the Nefesh descended. An example, the Nukva descended. And what was exposed? The Ruach. The Ruach. Because remember, Yechida, and then Yechida is clothed in Chaya, Chaya is clothed in Neshama, Neshama is clothed in Ruach, Ruach is clothed in Nefesh. If the Nefesh was peeled off, then the Ruach is exposed. This is why it says Varuach Elokim, that the Ruach specifically is what was vibrating over the water. And the water were the Chasadim that emerged, that destroyed the vessels in the first place. And for this reason, there are 2 things that emerge during pregnancy. The first thing, when you give pregnant, water will break. The second thing, blood. There are 2 things that happen when you give birth. The first thing that comes out of a woman is water. And the second thing that comes out of a woman is blood. And these are the Chasadim Gevuros. So now that we understand that Et Shemayim Vet Charetz is talking about these kings that died, the kings of Edom that died, then we can understand why the earth was Tohu Vabohu Vachoshek Openech Hamayim, because these kings then formulated all that would be the Klipa. The light that was in them, the Nukva, the Nefesh, descended into the darkness, we can say, the Tohu, right? We say that the highest level is called the mindlessness, or thoughtless place. But nonetheless, it animated that. And so our sages teach that the Shekhinah, or the Nukva, animates the Klipa. That the Klipa is actually animated by the Shekhinah. This occurred because of the shattering of the vessels, from this concept that I'm telling you now. Because when these kings emerge, they emerge outside of the fullness, outside of the direct light, outside of the place of Kedusha, outside of the place of life, outside of the place of holiness. And when they emerged, they were immediately extinguished by the darkness that it found itself in the midst of. But, however, it animated parts of that. And that animating part of it is animate what we call the Reshimim. There's a much deeper level behind these things. So, we continue. Since the letter Hey alludes to the 63 name, the letter Hey is prefixed as a definite article between the words the heaven and the earth. This again hints to what I stated, that the heaven and the earth refers to Zarim Pin and Nukva of Berea, because the entire Torah is called the Torah of Berea, for this reason. So we continue. The definite particle et is used twice, once before each of these words to allude to the Zarinpian Nukva of Asiya within Atzilus, and the rectification for the root of all of them was here. It's a very lofty level. Although in truth, there's a deeper level. The deeper level is that et and va'et hint to the two partsus, Leah and Rachel. Leah emerges from Da'as, which is above the heavens, so it says Et Hashemayim. That's the place where Leah emerges, which is called Et, because Et in general is a secret of the Nukva. This is talked about in the Book of Dragons. And Va'et is the secret of Rachel, because her height is Vav. An example, Tiferet, right? Tiferet to Yisod. This is hinted by the letter Vav at the beginning of Et. So, and since the primary fall occurred in Nukva, the Torah says in the following verse that the earth was chaos. Focusing on her, Zarinpin is only alluded to by the prefix Vav in the word "and the earth was," which again hints to what I just stated, that the Charetz, the Vav, is Zarinpin, and the Hey is the Nukva, and Eretz are the kings. And so the fall happened in Nukva. So now we're actually seeing the descent of the Nukva in the very first verse of the Torah. The following words are Tohu v'bochu v'choshech openei tahom, referring to the shattering of the vessels. Since there were many levels of shattering, each vessel shard descending further from the next, the Torah uses various terms to describe the cataclysm, saying chaos, emptiness, and darkness. That is to say, the lights were of different heights, different qualities in the upper world, and by their degree descended and created different depths. Greater lights descending further down, lesser lights not so much, etc., etc., etc. There are two opinions on the matter, one revealed and one concealed. The revealed opinion is that Tohu v'bochu v'choshech ol panei tahom, that Tohu is the highest level of the Klippa, and they attribute it to Atzilus. And they say that Bohu is like Beria, and V'choshech is like Yetzirah, and ol panei tahom is like Asiya. However, though, one must understand that the nature of the Klippa is an inversion. And so therefore, the hidden understanding is that Tohu actually refers to negative Asiya, which further exemplifies V'charetz hayta Tohu, that the earth was Tohu. The next level, which would be negative Yetzirah, would be Vabohu, which hints to the letter Vav, meaning Vav or 6, Bohu, are in it. 6 are in it, which hints to the idea that this is really Yetzirah. V'choshech is negative Beria, is the Klippa of Ima. This is the secret of V'choshech Kra Laila, right? Laila is the secret of V'choshech. That's Ima. That's the negative Ima. And Ol Panei Tahom is the negative Atzilus, which Ol Panei Tahom, they say, is Ol Panei Chamaves. This is further exemplified by the word Al Panei, which has a numerical value of Chokmah Bina. Al Panei has a numerical value of Chokmah Bina, to exemplify what I just stated. So it states the 52 name was included here with the 63 name. We see this from the fact that from out of the ruins of the 63 name whose vessels, we're talking about out of the lower 7 of Beria that fell, was subsequently produced the rectification via the 45 name, which was used to rectify reality. Essentially what it's saying is the 45 name is Zarinpin, and that Zarinpin's construction was to rectify the destruction of the Nukva. For at first everything was the 63 name. That is to say, everything is in the aspect of Beria. The kings die, which is the aspect of the 52, or Malchus, and the rectification of these things creates the 45. That is to say, Yetzirah in between them. This is further exemplified by the idea that he separated the waters from the waters, and the waters above he turns into a firmament, and they say that it wasn't completed. So they don't say on day 2 that it was good, but it carries over to day 3, in which there was created trees. And furthermore, this is exemplified by the idea that on day 6, it creates the man. And Adam has a numerical value of 45, because only after the 6 spheros had been rectified, which are the kings now, because every day is really referring to the kings, was the 45 name corrected. So the 45 is Zarinpin. Okay. On page 11, in the black, it says, in this way, the dross was removed from the 63 name. So this means the Zoma, right? The filth or the darkness that had destroyed the kings and surrounded the kings in the first place. This is indicated by the fact that the word formed by the letters representing the number 63 forms the root of the word dross, as in the verse, everyone is dross and completely foul. Samek Gimel. Dross or Samek Gimel hints to this idea of the 63 name in this aspect being dross. Now I'm going to tell you a much deeper secret going back to Tractate Nida. The conversation begins, and this is why it's important to study Talmud, because the Talmud is really at the highest level of Sod. But if you read it literally, you won't understand anything. You'll think women give birth to animals and things like that. But let's go back to Tractate Nida, see what it says. What is the amount of time that a woman is unclean after giving birth? They're going to say 7 days. What does this hint to? This hints to the 7 days of creation. The 7 days of creation, from which Rashi comments something explosive in Kohelet. When he does this commentary and he gives a comment over there in Kohelet Rabbah, it states that Rashi states that what is Hevel Hevelim, Hevel Hevelim, Akal Hevel, like vanity of vanities, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What does this refer to? He says that it refers to the 7 days of creation, which are called vanity. This is an explosive thing to say. Why is he saying this? It's for the exact same reason that I said that the uncleanliness of a woman is for 7 days after birth. If we're talking about the birth of Ima on day 1, as I revealed, that means everything that she created during that time is considered what? Unclean. Unclean. By reason of blood. This is a very powerful thing. For this reason, it is written by Yeshayahu, lift your eyes to the heavens above and to the earth below, and behold, the heaven will pass away like a vapor, and the earth will pass away like a garment. For what reason would the heaven and the earth need to pass away? And for what reason would there be rectification and all these other things? These all hint to these very deep, deep mysteries about Bereshis, which initially was forbidden to be talked about, because the only way to describe these things properly is through words of Torah. To describe them outside of the words of Torah is to speak ill, to basically commit heresy by blaspheming HaKadosh Baruch Hu and his creation. There's no way for us to understand these secrets in a safe way without using the words of Torah and the words of our sages. If we speak on it in plain words, then you commit all types of atrocious errors. The result of this rectification was that the 52 name was separated out of the original 63 name. Thus, the 52 name was latent within the 63 name. That is to say, the result is that the kings, or the aspect of Malchut, was separated from Beriah. That the Nukva was separated from Beriah. And that the Nukva would then become rectified in its own aspect and leave the aspect of Beriah. For this reason, chaos, Tohu, is mentioned here twice. Once explicitly and a second time by an allusion, since the initial words of the word, the earth was chaos and emptiness, the charetz chayta tohu, and reverse spell the word for tohu. So the vav of the charetz in the earth, chayta is a hey, and tohu is a tav. So it hints to these two aspects of the tohu. One corresponds to the 63 name and one corresponds to the 52 name. The one in reverse hints to the 63 name, that which is emerging from it, and that which corresponds to the earth is the 52 name as what the main subject of the Torah is discussing in terms of these vessels. It is known that the shattered vessels descended to the level of the world of Beriah. This is indicated by the phrase, and darkness was upon the face of the abyss. The last letters of these words spell Kalim. And that's because the kaf of Achoshek, so we say al panei tahom, so lamed of al, yud of panei, right? Tov vabohu vachoshek, so kaf of vachoshek, lamed of al, yud of panei, and mem of tahom spell the word kalim. These are the vessels that died, and these were the external vessels of Beriah, which caused the ruach to be exposed. There at the beginning, so it says, there at the beginning of Beriah is the face of the abyss, Al Pnei Tahom, or Al Pnei Chamaim. For reality from this point downward is referred to as water. For this reason, water is alluded to that which goes out of Berea and below. So Yetzirah is described as 7 seas, 7 wells, sometimes described as rivers. This is hinted at in the idea of a river goes out of Eden and splits into 4 heads, where the 4 heads are certainly these 4 levels. Tohu vavochu v'choshech opening to home and display the entire klipothic construct, because the first level, for example, of the first river, it turned into 4 heads. These heads are really the heads of the klipa, which are the 4 levels of the klipa. We know this because these mirror exactly the statue in Daniel, where it says these are 4 kingdoms. In the first kingdom, it says, "Behold," of Babylon. It says, "Behold, you are the head of gold." They say Tohu corresponds. Our sages say, for example, in Midrash Rabbah, that Tohu corresponds to Babylon, and it's called the head of gold. What does it say of the first river? It had good gold. So this exemplifies the idea that we're actually talking about the klipa. And everything beneath Eden is a river going out. Going out means descending. The phrase "in the Spirit of God hovering over the water" refers to the light of the vessels that the vessels could not contain, and thus it only hovered. Because remember, where was the spreading of the Chasadim and the Gevuros at? They spread in Hashemayim. They spread in the Ruach. They spread in Chesed Gevurah Tifras Netzach Al Yisod. And then they emerged and shattered Malchus. Over the water. None of the light descended into the vessels other than 288 sparks. This is indicated by the word hovered, it's on page 12, which can be read as 288 sparks died, an example they descended. And this is, as I said, these 288 lights of this Kalim are the secret of the word Ibor, that is to say, the pregnancy. The pregnancy. Now, at that time, the Sandal fetus was born. There was actually 2 that were born, and they're completely klipothic. The two, the male and the female. And so then, therefore, if you read Tractate Nida, it talks about the Sandal fetus. And the Sandal, Zohar tells us, is Sandalphon. Sandalphon. This is hinted to the idea of the word Tohu, because Tohu is a numerical value of Samael and Sandalphon, 131 plus 280. Furthermore, Sandalphon is alluded to by 280, which is the numerical value of the 5 Sophit letters. The 5 Sophit letters being a personification of the Gevurot. This is hinted at in the word Tohu, and these 2 are an example of the creation that took place there. For this reason, Avraham Abulafia and his Otzar Eden Ganuz says 2 things. He says that the man created on day 6 hints to the Satan, or hints to the Samak Mem. And this is a powerful key that further exemplifies this idea, although it's not explicitly talked about here, but nonetheless is heavily hinted at. So 288 is the sum of 72 and 216. So that would be the 372 names of Chesed Gevurah Tifras, and there's a 72 name of Malchus. That's one way of understanding the 288. There are other explanations for it. Another proof that what I said is that 288 is a numerical value of Ibor is that Merel Chafet can be spelled Resh Chet Mem. Resh Chet Mem can also mean womb. And Feitav is 480. It's a numerical value of the word Lilith, the womb of Lilith. Right? So Merel Chafet can be serufed to say the womb of Lilith, or womb of Pat, womb of bread, womb of 480, to further exemplify that secret that I said about the Ibor. This is all talked about in the Book of Dragons. This is indicated by the phrase Vayom Elohim Yechor Vechor, the light referring to the light of the 45 name that rectified reality. Why is he saying the 45 name is associated with light? Because the light refers to a child. This is what's written. Vayer Elohim etor kitov. They saw the light that was good. And what is kitov? This is the idea of he saw Moshe was a goodly child. So Moshe, which is a personification of Zaranpin, or the child, an example of a goodly child, is identified with the light, because both are called good, and they're synonymous with each other. Thus, the idea that this light refers to the light of Zaranpin being rectified here in this case, it suffices by the 45 name he's hinting at. And there was light refers to the actual rectification, which occurred during the 7 days of creation. The Torah therefore says, at the end of creation account, for on it he rested from all his work. For the work took place only in the world of Atzilus, inasmuch as all the other worlds, Berea, Tyr, and Asiya, are nothing but the seal of Atzilus. It is therefore stated that for on it he rested from all his work. Now, this is a very deep, perplexing statement by the Arizal. Accordingly, we should say logically up to this point that, okay, we follow Berea, track, yes. Then Yetzirah, the kings, and then Asiya. How then can we say that the seventh day refers to Atzilus? This doesn't quite make sense. However, there's a very secret tradition, and I'll share it with you here, and that is that the first day corresponds to Berea. This is alluded to by the idea of Bara Elohim, and for all the other aforementioned reasons. The second day refers to Yetzirah. This is in the firmament. The third day corresponds to Asiya. This is let the earth bring forth. The fourth day corresponds to Asiya again. This corresponds to let there be lights. The fifth day corresponds to Yetzirah. This is alluded to by let the water swarm. The sixth day corresponds to Berea. This is let us create man. And the seventh day, according to this logic, is Atzilus. And what we're looking at is what's called Or Yoshar, straight light, and Or Chozer, returning light. Returning light. So there's this idea that the light descended, and this idea that the light returned. I'll go through it one more time. The first day alludes to the world of Berea, as stated. Day 2 is Yetzirah. This is to create a firmament and to divide the waters from the waters, which occurs in Yetzirah. The third day, let the earth bring forth, refers to Asiya. The fourth day corresponds to Asiya again, and this is why this is let there be lights, and the lights are deficient, as we know, but to rule the day and the night, etc. The fifth day, let the water swarm, refers to Yetzirah, going back up. Let us create man refers to Berea, and then the seventh day refers to Atzilus. So he's hinting to this idea here. Now, up to this point, in the first creation account, man has not been mentioned. All this has been mentioned in heaven and earth above, at the level of 63 name, and ensuing days of the rectification as stated. After the rectification of Atzilus was completed, from this point downward, man is mentioned, referring to Zarampina, Berea, Yetzirah, and Asiya. So we'll go ahead and leave it right there. That brings us on to our page 12. And this is a very, although it's extraordinarily lofty, it's still a very generalized overview of the processes of creation, and he moves heavily away from giving too much commentary as to the specificities of the days of creation. The Agada gives very powerful warnings against the study of Bereshit for these reasons, because there's also a saying by our sages that says that one cannot study the words of Bereshit or study the creation process and not stumble. And there's a heavy idea behind that, because essentially it's all klipathic. So if you understand that the husk precedes the fruit, and everything you're talking about and reading is klipathic in the beginning, then you cannot but stumble, because you would ultimately or inevitably come to certain logical conclusions and speak on those things. And if you were to say that Yud-Keh Vav-Keh didn't create, but Elohim created, that would be a heresy. See, once again, talking about any of these mysteries outside of the words of our sages and the words of the Torah, and using proper Torah exegesis, it becomes a heresy. You cannot describe any of these secrets without using proper exegesis, because if you speak on them outside of the proper exegesis, it's heresy, 100%. And there are even more ideas, like, for example, like the word bara is found in the book in the book of Yechezkel, and it's used to describe a word cut off. And so then therefore we can read that Bereshit bara. Bara means to be cut off. And so this is all in the Book of Dragons, which begins to go into very, very, very deep, profound levels about the creation process and what's going on, and very specific details. But give an account on the general overview. The second thing that I have to mention is to the point from the first is that the entire creation story, Hashem begins with this information. So then, if God gives to us a document and he gives to us the Torah, and the first thing he does is describe this matter, and then what should be the first thing that we have an understanding of? Obviously, the Torah begins with Bereshit. Our Torah portion begins with this reading, so on and so forth. So why is it so important? Even if we can't see the importance from our perspective, HaKadosh Baruch Hu clearly saw it as so important that if he gave one document to humanity, it was so important that the first thing you should know is this. Why? Because without it, you can't really understand the cause of many different difficulties in life and so on and so forth, and the nature of the construct and the klipa and darkness and things like this. But once you begin to understand these matters, certain things will come into being. One, for example, it says Elohim is mentioned in all these places, not Yud Kei Vav Kei, but it's written Torah of Hashem. So then if Hashem intervened and gave us the Torah, why did he intervene and give us the Torah? Our sages say that if he didn't give us the Torah, we wouldn't be able to exist. World wouldn't even be able to exist. So there's many deep ideas behind this. And there's much more to be said on the matter, but we'll conclude it for here. So contemplate very carefully on the brief generalities of what the Aris all had to say about these matters, and carefully study them. Look at the words of Genesis yourself and conceive these ideas. And take away from this particular lesson in the beginning that the beginning is talking about the seven kings of Edom. Also take away and understand that the nature is klipa. The klipa was rectified first, so everything is klipathic in the beginning. And understand that Ima created, and it nowhere says Abba. So these are the most important takeaways to understand the deeper complexities. Hopefully, and we'll go about it in a deeper level in another place. But the last thing I'll mention is that in Likutei, there's a section called the Mother Sin and the Foolish King. And it's a deep commentary on the Zohar passage, let us create man, which describes Ima creating without Abba. And it goes into the highest sod of all of these different matters, exemplifying these ideas. So, okay, many blessings to you all. May Hashem bless each and every one of you. As David HaMelech said, open my eyes and I behold the wonders of your Torah. So, amen, amen, everyone. Shalom, salam.
Thank you so much.
Very much.
Shalom.